Hi, welcome to the public forum for one of the candidates for Dean. This is Debra Larson. She's Professor and Associate Dean at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. She's held that position for a year and a half. She served as Department Chair in Civil Engineering at that same institution, so she's got lots of experience. Prior to that, she was in industry as a practicing civil engineer. So she has both academic and industrial experience. She got her bachelor's and her master's degree at Michigan Technological University, and she received her PhD in civil engineering from Arizona State University. Debra Larson.
Thank you. Well, I think that throughout the day and a half or so, I've probably covered many of the things that I went ahead and guessed on what I should present to you all at the public forum. But if you bear with me, maybe we can go through this, and I'm more than happy to have you say, put your hand right in the middle of it and say, I would love to ask you a question about that instead of waiting to the end of this presentation. But I'd like to thank you for all attending this public forum. I've had a great visit. It's really a nice campus, a really enthusiastic group of faculty and staff. I haven't really interacted with too many students, only Brandon, who picked me up at the airport, who was a great student and provided me lots of insights about what his life is like and the co-op opportunities that he's had at Gulf Ford and General Mills and where he hopes to be going in manufacturing. So I thought I think the theme that I'd like to present, sort of overarching theme with this presentation, is to talk a little bit about the world that we're in today. And in October of 2008, we woke up to a world that perhaps we've never seen before in our lifetime, which was the fall, the Great Recession. And that Great Recession, as well as pinned against some other things that are happening globally, demands a different way of doing the work that we do at the institution, at the university. It demands a different type of leadership. And I suspect that you're all very interested in finding the very best person as dean. So I thought I would cover 4 different topics to help you decide if my experiences and the way I approach life, I approach my job as an academic, is in line with the kinds of things that you are looking for. I want to cover a bit about my background. Some of you have heard this before. I took it on before I even arrived here. I thought I would talk a bit about revision. I'm revising the vision that you all have for college, and I'll tell you why I think that maybe revising that vision may be of some interest. A bit about my management style, talking about fundraising and ambassadorship. Moving quickly on to my background, I think I have a relatively non-traditional background, a non-traditional pathway that got me from here, from somewhere else, and that somewhere else was that I came out of industry. And I also grew up in a really odd place of the world. It's called the end of the earth, and it's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that little teeny finger that sticks out in Lake Superior. And it truly is the end of the world. There's 350 inches of snow each year. Very rural, and some interesting social dynamics because of the constant snow that starts in October and doesn't let up until May. But that was Michigan Tech, a really great engineering-focused university. I went from Michigan Tech out to the Pacific Northwest, landed in Seattle, worked for the Weyerhaeuser Corporation, and that was after I had my master's degree, and I worked in the wood products industry mostly. I moved from Seattle down to Eugene, Oregon, over to Boise, Idaho, and then down to Phoenix, all within different areas of wood products. I served as a plant technical director. I've done product development, proprietary research, and also have run a technical service center doing some work with sales and technical product placement within those various capacities. My work is, however, doing proprietary research. I worked in a lab in Boise, loved the work. I always thought that perhaps I would like to become a professor. That just solidified in my mind how much I enjoy doing that kind of experimental work and that kind of research. Now, this was very market-oriented, very quick deadlines. You had to make some improvements in products or develop new products and get them out to market quickly. A different type of research, but research nevertheless, and I really much enjoyed it. I wrote a lot of reports. I have some patents, but it's all proprietary, so it doesn't show up really anywhere. I went back to school then to Arizona State University because I happened to have been in Phoenix. That's when I started my family. I have 2 children. They're older now. They're mostly on their way. And I have a husband who's just recently retired. He worked in Phoenix the whole time I was up at Northern Arizona University serving as a professor, so we had this sort of commuter life, and for 15 years my son knew no different, and today he's absolutely in shock because Dad is home full time. But anyways, the whole point of this story is not to talk so much about my family, which I'm very proud of, is more to say that I think it's very important that educators of engineers are in tune with the business of engineering. And I think that 10 or 12 years of my background of serving in those variety of roles as engineers has given me a very deep appreciation for the role of engineering and the business of engineering to society and to the world. And I think it's so important that educators work hand in hand with our external partners who are the employers of this next generation to educate, to provide our students these opportunities. And I think that gives me that ability to work with my external colleagues, and I feel like I somewhat understand the world, although I came from perhaps a discipline that was slightly different. I'm going to just jump right through my faculty time and just talk to you now about my associate dean time. I've been there almost 2 years as associate dean. It's a very large and complex college of engineers, foresters, and then all of the science and mathematicians. So it's biology, geology, physics, astronomy, chemistry, biochemistry, environmental science, environmental studies, and then all of the engineers and foresters, as I had mentioned earlier. There's about 200 faculty in our college. We have over 42,000 students. Roughly 300 to 400 of those students are graduate students. And we're running a research portfolio that's very similar in size and volume as the College of Engineering. And indeed, I am the person that's running that research portfolio. In fact, I'm the only associate dean in this college. There are no other associate deans. I have a dean, so there's only 2 faculty administrators. And so I take care of the research portfolio. I run the academic affairs, all the curricular-related issues, and then also student affairs. And I even work in budgets and some personnel management as well, because there's so much to do that the dean and I really have a team-based approach. And I think that that's provided me some opportunities to work in different areas that perhaps maybe not all associate deans get to work in, and moving some into some of those more dean-like areas. I thought I would talk a bit about the business of research. I think research is a very important part of the College of Engineering at NMSU. And I know that when you think about Northern Arizona University, you might be a little concerned about research on our university. Research, in fact, is a very important part, but it's more of in the sciences. The sciences at NAU have had the tradition, much stronger tradition of research at NAU than the engineers. The engineers at NAU were more undergraduate oriented and are now really beginning to, over the last couple of years, have really started to make some gains in research. We have a sustainable energy solutions group in engineering that's been very successful. We have some people doing some work in composite materials, some water type work, and some smart grid and power type activities in engineering. But the primary research engine for our college has been in the sciences. We have PhD programs in biology and forestry, and the rest are master's level programs. So I just thought, just to emphasize the level of funding, is that I just picked this one, which was fiscal year 08, so a little bit behind the times, but at that time, these were activations, and that was $22 million for our college, and that was without forestry. Forestry is forestry merged into our college a little 1 year later, and so now with even forestry coming in, they're a big researcher group on our college. So our totals are going up. I review, 400 or 500 proposals a year is what I'm reviewing and running through my office and signing off on. The one thing that I take a lot of pride in is that when I walked in as the associate dean, we had a good level of funding, but through some institutions of some practices, some bureaucracy, if you will, we've been able to see a tremendous increase in the number of proposals being written Now, I won't know what the activations are. I like to do that sort of on a fiscal year basis, what the increase in activations will have been. But, so some of those policies is that I created a process for research faculty, so that a person could be a soft-funded faculty member in our college, but it's a career path, so an assistant research associate and full. So we created that process, and we've already seen a tremendous number of people that are living out in the community, that PhDs, who are interested in associating themselves with NEU and to do research, and that has made a big impact on the tenure track faculty's ability to do research. So it's sort of like it's like having postdocs, but now they have a career path, which is this research professor path. That was one of the things that I instituted. And a second thing, and I think I've talked a lot about this over the last day and a half, and little did I know that it was such an important topic for you all, but it is something that I've been working on, and it has had very measurable benefits on the research productivity, is workload definition. And because I think many of you have heard this, not to bore you too much about this, it's a way of putting common definitions to the work that faculty do, and recognizing the diversity of work that faculty do, and give explicit credit in the assignment of workloads associated with that. So if you're writing proposals and you're getting grants, you're going to get explicit credit for that, and I'll use the terminology that's not appropriate, but I think you'll understand it buys down your teaching load. So that kind of incentive was very important for our faculty, and we've seen a doubling of the writing of research proposals in our college just by that simple thing. And also, the impact of stimulus funding, I can't go without talking about that. The amount of opportunities to do funded research have grown tremendously because of the ARRA stimulus funds. We have a lot of NIH researchers and NASA, as well as NSF researchers in our college, and so those funds and those extra funding opportunities have also helped. I will skip this one for just to try to be a little bit quicker because we started late, and I want to jump to this notion of visioning. I was very impressed when I first started looking at NMSU, that in terms of your strategic plan as a college, and what I liked about that strategic plan is that it was simple, it was clear, it was very understandable, it was metric-based, and I really liked the 3 goals. I think, however, there's room for refinement of that vision and to perhaps bring in the faculty and staff voice into that vision in a deeper way. And so I'm going to propose to you that maybe one of the things that you could all think about doing is reframing or refining that vision. Having the goals and the notion of wanting national or international prominence, I think, is an excellent thing to be working towards. But I think it's useful to frame that in a different way than perhaps using U.S. News rankings. Other rankings may also be even more appropriate than that. And I went ahead and used, there's a very popular model, a popular book out there called Good to Great. In this case, it's Good to Great in the social sector, so it's a monograph that is associated with the larger book, and it's much more in tune with our world as academics. So versus a profit-driven organization, it's more of our service orientation as an academic organization, so it's in the social sectors. So I went ahead and said, okay, let's answer these questions as an organization. You want a vision that really captures where you want to be going and what you could be the best at. So what you do with this hedgehog concept is you answer 3 questions. You answer, what can we be the best in the world about? And just doing that inventory of who you are and what your strengths are I think is a very helpful and empowering process for the folks in the institution, because you start to say, oh wow, we really could be the best in the world at that if we were strategic in the way we aligned and put our resources. The next question is what drives our resource engine? How many people at the institution know what drives the resource engine of the university? I think that's also a very important and timely question for us to be answering in academics. The acknowledgement of really what drives our resources. How do how do we fund our activities? Let's get that under control. And the last question, which is my favorite question, is what are you passionate about? Put all that together, and then you can have a vision statement that still reflects the notion of trying to get higher in the national rankings, but it's one that's reflecting your passions, one that is reflecting why you come to work each day. And that would be the suggestion of how perhaps as a faculty and staff you could go together to refine the current strategic plan that you have. So I went ahead and thought, okay, could I even do this myself just by doing the research of your university and of your college by looking at the website. And so I just did a lot of work and said, what are the strengths that I'm able to observe about the College of Engineering at NMSU? And I've got this laundry list. You have many, many, many different strengths. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to quickly just lay them out there, and I'm sure you've got more that you could add to this. I just absolutely love that this institution, throughout the fabric of the institution at the highest levels, is that there's this understanding that you have a commitment to the people of New Mexico, and that just seems to be infused in the culture and infused in the people that are associated with the institution. A diverse faculty and student body, and the opportunities, and well, one is that NMSU is one of the most highly productive universities in recruiting and retaining Hispanic students in STEM fields. So it's not just engineering, but the whole breadth of science and math, and there's tremendous data on that. That's a significant strength, and even an opportunity to even enhance the position at NMSU through the diverse student body and diverse faculty and staff. I borrowed this particular last quote from Paul Firth, the interim electrical engineering chair, because I absolutely loved it. And it says, we're large enough to do good research, or major research, but we're small enough to have major interactions between each other and with students and faculty. And I just thought that was really a wonderful strength of this institution. Other things, special strengths, lots of good special research strengths in water, transportation, aerospace, renewable energy. You know the story. A lot of strength associated with your relationships with external technology sector partners like White Sands or Los Alamos or Raytheon in APS, as we have our APS colleague here. I think that the way that NMSU has been able to partner with those folks has been a tremendous strength for the group. The college is well resourced, is well organized, and is well managed. A lot of faculty with industry or laboratory experiences. There's a long-standing commitment that I can detect from the employees of NMSU to NMSU. A lot of homegrown growing of faculty and staff that have come up as students and have stayed and continue to contribute to the university. We have all the engineering and technology programs. And technology programs is really an important part. There are very few technology programs, four-year technology programs left in the United States, and it is an important sector for upward mobility for students, and it's an important employment sector. Employers are definitely looking for these kinds of students who have the ability to work in engineering, but are very capable in the space of hands-on work. And that's, I think, for Engineering Research Center. We talked a lot with the engineering research staff today. I think that's a tremendous strength of the college, and the development activities that Patricia is involved with, and the amount of scholarships and endowments that you all have, I think is very helpful. And you have institutes that do much more than just doing research. You have your Institute of Energy and Environment. What I like about that is that indeed it's a research-driven organization, but they have a broader mission. They seem to be doing outreach and K through 12 work, and maybe even a little extension work. And I think that breadth of the contributions of institutes in a broader way is a tremendous strength for NMSU. Okay, that's your strengths. Then we have this whole global stuff happening around us, and the Tom Friedman book of hot, flat, crowded. So that's our world, right? It's hot, it's flat, it's crowded. Maybe it's not so crowded here in Las Cruces, not so crowded in Flagstaff, but it really is crowded. I just came back from India, and it's crowded. And so you combine hot, flat, and crowded with our economic collapse, worldwide economic collapse, and we have significant challenges as a world. And this is an opportunity for engineers. And I truly believe that this is the opportunity for engineers and scientists, is that we have the skills, we have the ability to create new solutions and to adapt existing solutions to face these challenges, not only from a technical piece, but also to help develop economics and combine working in sustainable technologies with a way of creating new economic opportunities. So I think that this is a wonderful thing. So I went ahead and said, okay, can I put this all together and come up with some ideas? I don't know if this makes any sense, but I just went ahead and ventured it. So let's answer those questions. Passion. Well, I think there's a lot of passion for creating and innovating in this college. And so then I went ahead and said, maybe if I could venture for a sustainable future, what can you be the best in the world at? And again, it's learning and teaching and educating and doing research and discovery, but within this very diverse community of folks. So it's within the community internally, and within the community externally with all your wonderful partners that you have created. So this large community. And finally, what drives your resources? It's the human capital. It's the human engine that drives universities. And we need to acknowledge the contributions of students to the resource engine, faculty and staff to that resource engine. And everybody wants to be connected, really. We really want to be working with each other. We want to be working across the disciplines, and we want to be connected to the outside world. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to use this thing of the 3 C's of creativity, community, and connections as perhaps a way to guide maybe a revisioning for you all, but it's very presumptuous on my part to suggest that this would be your vision. I just thought it would be a way to help you see a technique that you could use to do a little bit of revisioning if you were interested in that. Because I myself personally, I come to work because I want to contribute to, I want to do some creative work with my students in doing research. I want to contribute to their education. I want to be a part of a community. I don't come to work because there is some kind of magical ranking I'm running after, although rankings are very important because students and families pay attention to rankings. Employers pay attention to ranking. So don't get me wrong, that is a very important piece. But I think it's a byproduct of having your vision right, and that vision that reflects your passions and what you can be the best in the world at. Once you get your vision under control, you got to implement your vision. And so I'm going to add a 4th C, and that's collaboration. And that's where I think that, where I talk about being different. We got to be different. We need to do our research differently, and we need to do our teaching differently. And I like to use the word collaborate as a way to sort of capture what that differences mean. We need to cross disciplinary boundaries in many of the things we do, not just research, but many of the other things we do, because it is a different world. Just from the economic realities and trying to find efficiencies, collaborating in the true sense will be the opportunity to create new systems that will be able to maintain the same quality and rigor and creativity, but will also be able to help you face these economic challenges. I thought I would talk just briefly about why I like collaboration so much. I've been involved in the Greater Flagstaff Forest Partnership for about 10 years. This was a partnership that was truly a collaborative. It brought together people with very diverse agendas about how to deal with the forests in and around the Flagstaff area. Remember Los Alamos? Remember the fires? That's exactly what Flagstaff is about. And we had some major fires in the Flagstaff area in 1996, and the community said, oh my gosh, we cannot burn up. We've got to figure out what to do. So a group of people came together. So we had very, very radical environmental philosophies joining the group to loggers. So we had the full spectrum of cut every tree to cut no tree. And through this 10-year process, we've worked together. We've been very, very successful. It's been one of the most successful collaboratives in the nation. I've been on the board of directors. I've served as the chair of the partnership, and we have reduced the catastrophic wildfire threat around the Flagstaff area. I don't know what the percentages are, but we are not going to burn down today because we have done a forest restoration and we have thinned the forest, and we have created a little bit of economic byproducts that come together for that goal. And so that's the reason why I believe so much in collaboration and how you can bring diverse ideas together to really do something, find that middle ground and really do something productive. I've talked a lot about this, and because I was sort of guessing before I came here of what maybe some of your issues are, recognizing that you all might be facing a budget cut. I thought I could talk about the way we approached a budget cut last year at NAU, because I'm guessing that you're looking at the dean saying, how is that person going to help move us through an impending budget cut? And that's a very anxious position to be in when I think you're hiring new people, or just even if you got stable, how you're going to move through that. I'll just quickly talk through this for the benefit of the videotape, because I know some of you have heard this from me already, because it's been an interesting thing. In 0809, NEU needed to take a 16% cut to its state budget. That trickled down to the academic units, and we had to take a 7.7% cut in our college. We had to make this cut in a very short period of time. We didn't have the luxury of spending months analyzing and examining it. And so this is the process that we used in our college, and it was as hard as it was to identify and make those cuts, it was regarded as the best process that was utilized by the colleges on our campus, and that we had buy-in from everybody. It resulted that we made our cuts. They were very difficult. We're not happy about them. They've had some long-term impacts, but we got through that process without faculty and staff revolting, which is what did happen in a couple other colleges as they were trying to make identified. So the process was again collaborative, that 4C, and we did a lot of homework at the front end in the dean's office, myself and the budget manager and our personnel director. We figured out where our money was, where it wasn't. We were able to put that together into a form that was easily digestible and easily be able to transmit out to the faculty and the staff. We did some brainstorming on what maybe areas are that we could cut. We modeled those, but then we didn't go any further with that. We went out to the chairs. We had 13 department chairs or school directors at the time, assembled them into 3 teams, gave them the assignment to go back out and in their teams come up with ideas how to make that 7.7% cut. We provided them with all the budgetary information, again, in a digestible way, however, so that they weren't spending their time trying to figure out what the college's budget looked like.
Were those teams along the lines of natural science, engineering,
No.
forestry? How did you determine how the teams were?
Personality, and I made the teams up, and I was very interested in that these were teams that could function well together, and there was no alignment based upon discipline at all. And so we had, in fact, I was more interested in splitting so that we had engineers in every team, and we only have one forestry school, so I could only put that person that one place. But also we had a number of sciences, so we would spread. But math, they're not science, but we keep saying that they're science, so they're different. It was more of personality and more of trying to get a diversity of the way people think and the way they approach their problem solving, so that you could have some interesting discussion, but discussions that would be functional, because some of the personalities might not have worked as well with other personalities, and we kind of knew what those were, what those more difficult interactions might have been. So I was very careful how I populated those teams.
So was it mostly to get a size that you thought was manageable? Is that why you chose the 3?
3, yes. Yeah, so 13, 3, so what were we, 4 or 5 people on a team?
Because it does seem like it's really easy with budget cuts to look at everybody else's budget who's not on the small team and think about how to cut theirs.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And sure, there was some elements of that. So they were representing diverse groups, and the engineers were split. Made sure they were sprinkled into each of the 3 teams. And absolutely, some chairs had stronger personalities than other chairs, and so therein lie some of those dilemmas. But they were given the challenge. They came forward. We came back in a couple weeks. They made presentations to the full group. And the other thing that the chairs had to do is they had to serve as because we were working under such a short time frame, that we didn't have the luxury of having these large faculty meetings associated with it. The other thing the chair's job was to do was to be the communication, to communicate to the faculty about what was going on, to gather feedback from the faculty about ideas. And in some cases, department chairs did a marvelous job with it. In other cases, it didn't maybe work as effectively. But that was the other job that the chairs had. So they were very busy. But it was a short period of time. So in a couple weeks, they came back. Each team presented their ideas. And we used poster boards, and people write them up. Some teams came with already their posters prepared, and different teams took different tacks. That all was put into the blender. We sat on it, we discussed it, we debated. A lot of it was electronic. We came back again in a second meeting in a couple weeks, and we made the decisions as a college, as the college leadership. Now, the dean's office certainly provided a lot of direction, some focus, and we tried to do that with the front-end information that we gave people so that the ideas really were realistic, and nobody was off the hook. Everybody had to come up with a 7.7% cut. You couldn't pretend that was going to go away, and you couldn't pretend that there was going to be some kind of magical pot of money. So we had ground rules and things like that. So we made our cut, and it was a very difficult cut. We had 16 open faculty searches for tenure track faculty. Shut those all down, all those lines were turned back. That was the major portion of the cut, a really difficult thing to do. But it was this sort of trying to spread out the pain, if you will. And then we merged some departments. So we were at about 13 departments, now we're down to 10 departments. We had some really small departments that were really struggling, just functioning as a department. They got moved into larger departments. Computer science, as an example, had roughly about 4 faculty, 1 associate professor. The rest were young. They were really struggling just to meet their service needs, the service requirements of that department. Moved them merged them with electrical engineering, and that has become a really positive, strengthening merger, so that these young computer science faculty are getting mentorship from some of the more senior electrical engineers, and it's been a really positive thing. We did that with geology, environmental sciences, and environmental studies. They all merged into a school. Similarly, it was because environmental science and studies was really tiny again, but there's a lot of synergy in the earth science area of them, so we put those together. And then we put construction management in with civil and environmental engineering. So that's the merging that we made. So we had some savings relative to closing of some chairs and director positions with that. It's not a huge amount, but in many ways it was more of a strengthening strategy. We reduced a little bit of our staff. We have about 150 staff. We took about a reduction of 2.5 FTE in staff, and those were through sort of partial layoffs. People went from 40 hours to 30 hours. One person went down to half-time. No one was laid off fully. Everybody kept their benefits. So we made a small amount of staff. We cut a little bit of operations in those departments that didn't have an open search. So we wanted to be equitable. They also had to, so we wanted to make sure that there was an equitable amount of percentages that were coming out of each department's areas. So if you didn't have a search going on, if you didn't contribute a faculty line, you had to contribute in another way. Biology was an example that didn't have a search. So they had to dig into their operations and had to contribute to their cut through operations. We reduced some of our graduate assistant pools, and that's how we made the cut. And no one's happy about this, and the long-term impacts are significant. But it was a process that everyone bought into. We moved through it, and we're moving forward, and we're not sitting back grousing about cuts being made without the faculty being involved in that, and there was no alternative. We had to make the cut. When I think about us in the university, I don't think there's really few organizations like ours where we're more or less, especially the faculty, we are free agents, we're investors. We can buy the university stock, we can sell that stock, or we can just hold it. And I think it's really important to think about faculty that way. And as an administrator, it's important to be creating an environment where the faculty and staff continue to want to invest in that organization. They want to continue to buy your stock. So that's an environment that's supportive and is respectful. It's an environment that provides opportunities. It's not the no organization, it's the yes organization, but a qualified yes, because you can't do every wild idea. It's got to be practical yes ideas. And so people need to know that they can have a productive career, that they can continue to buy, invest in your university stock. But it also has to be transparent. It also has to be fair. Everyone needs to be felt like that everyone's being dealt fairly, that your work is being accounted for fairly, and it's being valued, and there has to be an expectation of high quality with accountability. So there's all this great stuff, but it also has to be well managed, which is the bottom two bullets. And that's how I think about managing and thinking about academic institutions and the role that various people play in that. I think the dean's job is not so much that I'm a good researcher, that I'm a successful faculty member, but it's my job to make sure that everybody else is successful and that they can be the best they can be. But that's how I think about the role of a dean, and maybe even the department chair, although the department chair has a slightly different role, like really one foot as a faculty member and one foot as an administrator, so they're a bit more split, whereas a dean is firmly now on the administrative side, and we're a facilitator of research, we're a reader of research, we're a synthesizer of ideas, maybe not so much that I'm in the lab myself. And because if everyone else is good, then if everyone else is able to do what they want, they can be the best in the world at, then the institution is going to be very successful. People often ask, what do you know about fundraising and being an ambassador? And I thought I would talk a little bit about what that meant for me as a department chair. When I moved into being a department chair, and it was a department that had lots of troubles, the question was, I didn't realize how much I would enjoy working with external partners. And I think the reason why I liked that part of my job so much is how much I think about how important engineering is. I am really passionate about the role that engineering plays in the world. And it's a pathway for upward mobility for students, but it's also a pathway that contributes and provides solutions that benefit the world. So I so much think that engineering is a pathway. I drive around Arizona with this license plate. What does it say? It says be civil. Now I'm not commenting on what kind of bad driver you are. What I'm commenting on is come to NAU in this case and become a civil engineer, or more broadly, become an engineer, because this is and it's that kind of enthusiasm that I have for engineering that helps me move outside of, I'm an engineer, true blue engineer, so I'm kind of shy, I'm a little introverted, I struggle, yeah, okay, you get it, I'm maybe not so people-oriented, I like people, but I'm an engineer. So that passion for engineering allows me, makes it just feels so natural. I love being able to talk about engineering and to work with external partners who are similarly interested in engineering. And it's easy, it's fun. It's that fun part that I really enjoy. So I'm almost done, and I'm almost running out of time. Fundraising is a big part of being a dean. And I have had, as department chair, that was the opportunity where I was doing some fundraising, had I think some nice successes at a place that didn't have a tradition of fundraising, and was able to more than triple the number of gifts that were coming into our department. At that time, much of those gifts are oriented towards student projects, student associations, scholarships, a lot of student oriented, and also increase the attention of the state for NAU engineers. And I feel that that's one of my big accomplishments as department chair when I was in civil and environmental engineering. But the most important thing about fundraising is, the first thing is, it's about friend raising. People are interested in being a part of your organization if they trust in you, they trust in where you're going, that they're going to trust that you are going to do the best that you possibly can. and that they can become a part of that community, and they have the same kinds of interests and the same kind of goals. And it's a process of making friends. And then people give of themselves in many different ways. It's much more than just dollars. It's time. It's their talent. They may participate in an advisory council. They might perhaps be giving guest lectures. It's that talent part, and it's also resources. All three of these things are most important, and it's useful to have that perspective and to be able to develop those kinds of mutually beneficial relationships with folks who want to contribute and you want to contribute, and that you are all together marching towards the betterment of the organization. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're educating students for the practice of engineering, and we are also creating research, and we're doing innovative things, but hopefully we're integrating our students into that research, because that's also part of that education and the skill building that they can be doing. So the other thing is that when a gift, as Patricia knows, when a gift has been received, your work has just begun. I won't even go any further with that. So I'm going to stop, I'm going to close, and I'd like to, so I went ahead and just ventured this 4C kind of thing for you, but I want to just close it out with this one little notion again about the world is different today, and it feels very scary, but the opportunity that we as engineers have. And furthermore, I think what's also really positive about this is we are associated with an organization, a unique organization, that being higher education, that's empowered to think boldly about these problems, that's empowered to implement and come up with solutions to these problems. So what a better place to be associated with than in higher education, where your work actually could be making a big difference to these global challenges. And I think that's a nice way to think about what we should be doing in higher education as we face all of these new challenges and these difficulties. And I am done. Thank you. Any questions? I think I've run out of time.
I think we actually have about 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. No questions?
I actually have some questions, and I'm not even an engineer. But there are some people who aren't surprised that I have some questions. I really enjoyed this presentation, and I actually have been sort of focusing on 4 different questions over the course of these interviews, and you answered 2 in your presentation.
Oh, great.
But one of the things that you raised in the presentation, the question of what drives your resource engine,
Yeah.
and you took a particular tack on that. Well, one of the things that drives our resource engine here is this whole concept of allocating our state-generated resources by credit hour. And this has some implications, particularly for programs that, and I think engineering fits in this, for programs that sometimes need to have small classes to provide particular special experience.
So I have been learning about this particular practice that has been in place in your institution of allocating your general fund solely based upon the student credit hour generation. And I think I agree. I think that that's a single measure that doesn't appropriately reflect all of the other contributions and all of the other things that units and colleges are doing and need to be doing. For example, the amount of indirect cost recovery, the amount of overhead dollars that this college contributes to the university, especially now that you've had a change in the indirect distribution, is tremendous. That is a major contributor to the financial position of the university. So that perhaps that ought to be, I'm proposing to you that ought to be another, that could be an example of another type of factor or metric that could be built into the way resources are, decisions are being made about resource allocation. So I think that single measure is hurtful for a place like the College of Engineering because it doesn't reflect all the many other things that you do. And practices will continue because you have a new administration coming on board. You probably know better than I know whether or not you think the new administration may be modifying or adjusting some of those types of practices.
Well, somebody in here may know that, but I sure don't. I mean, our president came like just 2 weeks before our legislative session started,
I know.
so she hasn't had much time to impose her ideas or will on much here on the campus. The other question I had, if people don't mind, and the credit hour thing is kind of like one example of this. But my experience here, and by the way, my name's Bobby Derlin, and I'm in the College of Extended Learning. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. And I wear galoshes and Rubbermaid gloves when I flip the circuit breaker, so I really know nothing about engineering. But we seem to have teetered in the past period of years sort of in this tension between centralizing services and decentralizing them. And I'm wondering if in your conversations, if you have had an impression about where we are, and in particular, how this is either supporting or not facilitating creativity in research in a college like engineering.
In the last meeting that I was in, I think maybe most of the staff in the Engineering Research Center were in it, and they asked a very similar question. And my answer is probably maybe less fulfilling than you would hope it to be. And the reason is because the way I think about solving problems and moving organizations forward, and how I think about that is that the sustainable changes happen by not working on the extremes, by not saying we're going to go fully decentralized or by fully centralized, but in fact finding a balance. There's reasons why each of those positions are valid. There are truths in all of those, but the trick, I think, is always to find where is that balance. The balance is all of these competing ideas, competing demands, and that you're coming together and you're finding a process, you're finding some practices that take the best and that function best for the organization. Now, everyone speaks so highly of the Engineering Research Center and their contributions to the research productivity of this college. And certainly there's a lot of concerns about the pre-award activities being centralized. And I'm uncomfortable in saying, oh no, you shouldn't do it, or yes, you shouldn't do it, because I don't understand the full scope. I don't understand the finances part yet of that. But I wanted to tell you, that's kind of how I like to think of the world. It's kind of boring. You know, it's not very exciting or attention grabbing when you say, well, you know, I want to try to find the middle ground, and I'm going to put this path in. But that's been my experience, that those are the best solutions. Those are the ones that are sustainable, and those are the ones that are working for the organization. And I certainly, however, within the services of the Engineering Research Center, I do have a pretty firm belief about where post-award grant administration belongs, and that belongs in the college. So I do have a strong feeling on that one.
You had mentioned that when your college went through a workload exercise, that then proposals went up. Did some of the folks that had focused more on teaching, did they start doing more proposals?
Yep.
How do you invigorate folks that have focused much more on the teaching aspect and not so much the research aspect?
Well, that was, different people are motivated or incentivized in different ways. But in fact, we're still evolving. Friday, when I go back tomorrow, I hope to have the blessing of this final version. But just to try to make sure I get that piece clear, is if you are writing proposals at a certain level of funding, or if you have active grants at a certain level of funding, then you are getting explicit release, explicit buy down from that base teaching load. So for some faculty who maybe who are interested in doing research, but they are really struggling with the teaching load that they've been asked to do, they would like to do research, but they just haven't been able to find the time or to be able to go there, that made a world of difference for them. So that group, that kind of practices really helped that particular group who were just struggling with just finding the time to be able to do together for that goal. And so that's the reason why I believe so much in collaboration and how you can bring diverse ideas together to really do something, find that middle ground and really do something productive. I've talked a lot about this, and because I was sort of guessing before I came here of what maybe some of your issues are, recognizing that you all might be facing a budget cut. I thought I could talk about the way we approached a budget cut last year at NAU, because I'm guessing that you're looking at the dean saying, how is that person going to help move us through an impending budget cut? And that's a very anxious position to be in when I think you're hiring new people, or just even if you got stable, how you're going to move through that. I'll just quickly talk through this for the benefit of the videotape, because I know some of you have heard this from me already, because it's been an interesting thing. In 0809, NEU needed to take a 16% cut to its state budget. That trickled down to the academic units, and we had to take a 7.7% cut in our college. We had to make this cut in a very short period of time. We didn't have the luxury of spending months analyzing and examining it. And so this is the process that we used in our college, and it was as hard as it was to identify and make those cuts, it was regarded as the best process that was utilized by the colleges on our campus, and that we had buy-in from everybody. It resulted that we made our cuts. They were very difficult. We're not happy about them. They've had some long-term impacts, but we got through that process without faculty and staff revolting, which is what did happen in a couple other colleges as they were trying to make and identify it. So the process was again collaborative, that 4C, and we did a lot of homework at the front end in the dean's office, myself and the budget manager and our personnel director. We figured out where our money was, where it wasn't. We were able to put that together into a form that was easily digestible and easily be able to transmit out to the faculty and staff. We did some brainstorming on what maybe areas are that we could cut. We modeled those, but then we didn't go any further with that. We went out to the chairs. We had 13 department chairs or school directors at the time, assembled them into 3 teams, gave them the assignment to go back out and in their teams come up with ideas how to make that 7.7% cut. We provided them with all the budgetary information, again, in a digestible way, however, so that they weren't spending their time trying to figure out what the college's budget looked like.
Were those teams along the lines of natural science, engineering,
No.
forestry? How did you determine how the teams were?
Personality, and I made the teams up, and I was very interested in that these were teams that could function well together, and there was no alignment based upon discipline at all. And so we had, in fact, I was more interested in splitting so that we had engineers in every team, and we only have one forestry school, so I could only put that person that one place. But also we had a number of sciences, so we would spread. But math, they're not science, but we keep saying that they're science, so they're different. It was more of personality and more of trying to get a diversity of the way people think and the way they approach their problem solving, so that you could have some interesting discussion, but discussions that would be functional, because some of the personalities might not have worked as well with other personalities, and we kind of knew what those were, what those more difficult interactions might have been. So I was very careful how I populated those teams.
So was it mostly to get a size that you thought was manageable? Is that why you chose the 3?
3, yes. Yeah, so 13, 3, so what were we, 4 or 5 people on a team?
Because it does seem like it's really easy with budget cuts to look at everybody else's budget who's not on the small team and think about how to cut theirs.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And sure, there was some elements of that. So they were representing diverse groups, and the engineers were split. Made sure they were sprinkled into each of the 3 teams. And absolutely, some chairs had stronger personalities than other chairs, And so therein lies some of those dilemmas. But they were given the challenge. They came forward. We came back in a couple weeks. They made presentations to the full group. And the other thing that the chairs had to do is they had to serve as because we were working under such a short time frame, that we didn't have the luxury of having these large faculty meetings associated with it. The other thing the chair's job was to do was to be the communication, to communicate to the faculty about what was going on, to gather feedback from the faculty about ideas. And in some cases, department chairs did a marvelous job with it. In other cases, it didn't maybe work as effectively. But that was the other job that the chairs had. So they were very busy. But it was a short period of time. So in a couple weeks, they came back. Each team presented their ideas, and we used poster boards, and people write them up. Some teams came with already their posters prepared, and different teams took different tacks. That all was put into the blender. We sat on it, we discussed it, we debated. A lot of it was electronic. We came back again in a second meeting in a couple weeks, and we made the decisions as a college, as the college leadership. Now, the dean's office certainly provided a lot of direction, some focus, and we tried to do that with the front-end information that we gave people so that the ideas really were realistic, and nobody was off the hook. Everybody had to come up with a 7.7% cut. You couldn't pretend that was going to go away, and you couldn't pretend that there was going to be some kind of magical pot of money. So we had ground rules and things like that. So we made our cut, and it was a very difficult cut. We closed 16. We had 16 open faculty searches for tenure track faculty. Shut those all down. All those lines were turned back. That was the major portion of the cut. A really difficult thing to do, but it was this sort of trying to spread out the pain, if you will. And then we merged some departments. So we were about 13 departments. Now we're down to 10 departments. We had some really small departments that were really struggling, just functioning as a department. They got moved into larger departments. Computer science, as an example, had roughly about 4 faculty, 1 associate professor. The rest were young. They were really struggling just to meet their service needs, the service requirements of that department. Moved them merged them with electrical engineering, and that has become a really positive, strengthening merger, so that the these young computer science faculty are getting mentorship from some of the more senior electrical engineers, and it's been a really positive thing. We did that with geology, environmental sciences, and environmental studies. They all merged into a school. Similarly, it was because environmental science and studies was really tiny again, but there's a lot of synergy. We allowed proposal writing to be a part of that, not just funded activity. For faculty, however, who maybe have spent, maybe it's been a long time since they've done research. I also think that in the college, you need to have criteria, you need to have pathways, you need to have expectations that allow somebody to focus on teaching. But I'm going to suggest that it's more than just being, if you're going to focus on teaching, you do have to carry your full teaching load. You have to be effective in that classroom. And then I would even propose that perhaps even a little further goes on with that. And that is that you are thinking about your teaching in a scholarly way. And even going so far as perhaps you've got a ready-made laboratory. It's your classroom, where you could be doing some experiments, you could be trying out some different techniques and examining the learning that happens with that technique, and then you could be disseminating. So that's how I would see a teaching pathway working, and I would hope that then that would also be attractive, and it would energize that kind of that pathway for faculty, and it would energize them. And I think it's an unrealized opportunity for many engineering colleges, and that is gaining prominence in the quality of your undergraduate education programs. So if you have a cadre of faculty who are really committed to that, and that you are able to support them to do some dissemination and begin to move out into the national scene, I think that enhances the reputation of your college as well as research does. And I think it's an unrealized opportunity, and it's one that I suspect that NMSU could easily capture with just a little bit of refinement and some practices. So that's the answer.
We need to go to the next,
You
I'm
need to
sorry.
go.
Yeah.